Dawn breaks on the Mississippi River as the chapter of a new day begins. On this day, scores of barges up to 300 feet long, hauling 2,500 tons each, will transport petroleum, coal, steel, rock, and grain along the river to and from the Gulf Coast ports, generating billions of dollars in economic benefit for the nation. The Mississippi River holds an important place in American folklore. In an era when the river captivated the country's imagination for colorful characters and romanticized its purpose, its economic role was underplayed. Its strength seemed so powerful, while decisions affecting its future were often dismissed. And it's easy to understand why. The Big River is the world's fourth largest, running through 10 states. A drop of rain at its northmost point takes 90 days to reach the Gulf. Its watershed is the fourth largest in the world, including parts of 31 states, covering 1.2 million square miles. More than 50 cities depend on the Mississippi for their water supply. Unnoticed by most Americans, though, is the vast economic impact of the river. More than $7 billion in agricultural and forest products flow down the river each year. The basin produces 92% of the nation's agricultural exports and secures America's energy coast in the Delta, where the river meets the Gulf in America's wetland, one of the world's most important estuaries. Billions of dollars in tourism revenue are generated each year along the river's banks. Hunters and fishermen alone spend $158 million annually in search of its natural bounty. The river's economic might is undeniably linked to its ecological health, which in many places is deteriorating. This is bad news for the more than 60% of North American birds who use the Mississippi River Basin as their migratory flyway, and 25% of all North American fish species that live in the Mississippi River watershed. The river is a source of fresh water and life, and we're reaching a better understanding that any decision made on one part of the river affects the entire system. For the Big River to work, a common interest for the entire river system must take priority.
The river itself has no beginning or end. In its beginning, it is not yet the river. In the end, it is no longer the river. At what point in its course does the Mississippi become what the Mississippi means?
America's WETLAND Foundation, its sponsors and partners, will bring together government officials, corporate executives, economic experts, scientists, engineers, environmental advocates, and concerned citizens to work toward comprehensive river management. We call it the Big River Works, a series of 5 leadership forums aimed at building cooperation to restore the health of the mighty river. In New Orleans, the focus will be setting a framework for connecting interests and establishing shared goals for the initiative. Memphis serves as the host of the Big River Thrives, which will look at ecosystem sustainability and the habitats, flyways, and estuaries, teeming with fish and waterfowl that require action to survive. We explore how the Big River lives in St. Louis, where we'll discuss partnerships for a healthy river, water quality, river access, and carbon and nutrient loads that impact a sound river environment and economy. Minneapolis is home for The Big River Provides, addressing community and jobs, tourism, recreation, culture, and history. We'll bring together the region's top local and state policymakers to discuss solutions for the Big River's future. And finally, we close in Chicago for The Big River Moves, looking at commerce, navigation, sediment flow, flooding, beneficial use of dredge materials, restoration, and setting the stage for an accord for cooperation to sustain the Mississippi River system.
It is not a commonplace river, but on the contrary, is in all ways remarkable.
As this day ends, the mighty Mississippi awaits a decision. Does America have the will to address the issues affecting the river's environmental and economic future? If the Mississippi River is to fulfill its destiny as the source of life, we must act together for its health. The Big River works. It has, and it will. Join us in this national conversation to protect the system that is the heart and promise of a great land.
These are not easy issues, but when you face it from the standpoint of Louisiana and the lower river, as I said, I think at the end, it's easier for us to identify the problems. It's easier for us to really discuss the very critical issues that we face. That is not always so easy when we begin to talk about the areas north of us, because they have their own individual and distinct problems that they think are more important. And so we've got to begin to figure out how to pull them all together to deal with what we have down here, and which is, I think, fairly well identified in the master plan, and at the same time begin to develop the changes required north of us and see how we can fit in that and they can fit in with what we're trying to do. This is a, as you've heard the discussion, you know, there's nothing easy about this. We talk about this massive, third largest watershed in the world. We give it all its size, and the fact of the matter is, for every mile in that third largest watershed, there is a distinct problem that some landowner or some politician feels is the most important thing for them to deal with. I think we'll work through it. We've got a lot of people working on it here and in other parts of the country. We've got to work through it clearly in terms of our life here, and I think we shall.
Well, I'm here as a mayor calling upon other mayors to make sure that we incorporate the Big River into our plans, from economics to recreational to many other activities that you could do with that river other than worry about floods and high water. That you're going to have those things, but when you look at the overall benefits of the river, it changes the face of a city. It brings people together. It lets other people know who visit those cities that these cities are full of vim and vigor and vitality, and that they did not just look at that river, they went out to do some things, from parks to bicycle trails to what we have in Baton Rouge, stages that incorporate the river, businesses now that have built in such a way that at the top of their building you have restaurants where you can see the river from the top of their buildings. So there are a lot of things that can be done, but again, the commonality here is that this is not an overnight fix. This is not automatic. It's going to take all of us, even though we may have differences, to find the commonalities, bring those commonalities together, and then move forward so people can see all of us working together to show that the Big River works. Thank you.
The Mississippi River has always been an incredible conservation priority. Our mission is conserving important lands and water for nature and people, and I think the Mississippi River embodies that spirit. We have economic resources, cultural resources, incredible natural resources, and while we have benefited from all the things the river offers for years and years, we certainly are seeing the prices of less than totally integrated management. And when I see this Big River Works initiative, I'm very encouraged by the people we have in one room. We have business interests, NGOs, local government, and may I say, Mayor Holden, you have done a wonderful job as a Baton Rouge resident in integrating the river into Baton Rouge's livelihood. And we hope to see that these series of forums really highlight the linkages between lands and water, nature, and people as we go up. And I think the focus on different issues is going to feed very well into other ongoing initiatives. So this isn't spinning other wheels. I think it just reflects a culmination of concern and desire to invest in America's greatest river, the Mississippi River. So we're very pleased to be a part of this whole initiative.
We now are in the 21st century dealing with problems that we generated over the last 100 years or so based on what we understood as how these systems work. And so I think our real challenge is that we keep a systems approach, that we can actually deal with problems and issues and not allow our compartmental sort of tendencies to compartmentalize those issues, that we keep the big picture very apparent. To give you an example, down here in the lower part of the river where we're trying to build the delta is a very different system as the way it operates. And our system of operation here of deposition relies on the processes that occur in the upper watershed, which are the processes of erosion. So you actually have to couple your solutions here with your opportunities in the upper part of the watershed. And there's a lot of times not clear dialogue as to where the trade-offs and opportunities reside in solving our problems here, such as having available sediment to build landscapes that protect communities, with problems upstream where there's too much sediment and they're trying to get rid of that sediment relative to their problems and looking for opportunities. So a lot of this systems approaches and the processes that we discussed here today is to actually deal with trade-offs in a systems view from an upstream to a downstream perspective, bring our clear understanding of how the system works, to look for opportunities of trade-offs and find workable solutions that not only accommodate the environment, but also accommodate the economies along the river, and also, as we talked about, protecting our culture. And it's that dimension of sustainability with all three of those elements that's really critical. And I look forward to working with the universities up and down the Mississippi River through this process of bringing our best science to the table and accommodate what we think are fair and actually some really win-win opportunities for fixing and repairing this great river system. Thank you.
It's one thing for mayors and governors of other cities and states to envy our river. Well, they can't have the river, but they're certainly starting to make plans for the water. That's what we have to know, is that our failure to define a vision and to organize to pursue that is not going to be deciding whether or not things change on the Mississippi River. The only question is whether they will improve.
Our message is that we've long understood that the Mississippi River is a conservation priority, and we need to work together with all interests, including business, local, state, federal government, other conservation organizations like the one that I belong to, and work to keep this river in a sustainable state. I mean, we know that we have depended on this river for a long time for inspiration for artists, for navigation, for our quality of life, our economic resources, but the river's changing. We've caused a lot of these changes. Now we need to make sure we're working together to make sure we can enjoy it for its many uses into the future.
What I have appreciated about the forum is the way that they're looking at it with a lot of depth, right? From a cultural perspective, technical perspective, and economic perspective. And I love the concept that, the river works together as one, no matter how we may separate it, divide it, or own it, how we may exploit it. However, it does its thing all together. And whatever solutions, opportunities that are created from the river or challenges will be done basically in the same way.
We have a river, the Mississippi River. You cannot turn your back on that river. You have many opportunities to even do greater things along the river, to enlighten people, entertain people, bring out the culture, bring out music, you name it. But you just have to go forth and put that effort out there in order to make it happen. The river's not going to do anything by just moving along Baton Rouge. We have to take advantage of it and make sure that our children and their children can understand the beauty it brings to our neighborhood.
This river won't take care of itself as it takes care of us. So as we look to the future, we have to decide what kind of river we want to be served by and how best we can serve that river.
We have to get everybody behind a new way of managing the Mississippi River. It's not just an environmental issue, it's an economic issue, it's a social issue. We've got to bring all the river interests together, and I think that's what we're here for.
I think that, of course, we start with an understanding and an analysis of the problems we have associated with the wetlands, the delta, and its impact upon not just Louisiana, but the region and the nation in terms of what could happen and what will happen if we don't really get our mind around fixing these issues. Part and parcel of that, of course, deals with this overall concept of the interrelationship between the Mississippi River and the delta. And we need to make sure that as we are concerned with this concept of redoing the delta and diversions and the rest of it, we understand the interrelationship between the whole river and the delta, because what we do is important not just to us but to them as well. And hopefully what we can do is also get them to understand that what we're doing down here is not just critical for the state of Louisiana, but also critical for all those states on either side of the Mississippi as it goes all the way up to Indiana and Illinois. That's what we're trying to do. It's a difficult issue, quite frankly, because the complexities of looking at this river in terms of industry, in terms of the sociological concepts of dealing with it are multiple. And so getting some design over what we're trying to end up with within the context of a very multicultural group is going to be the challenge, but I think we'll end up being able to do it.